Please. I had exactly $2,417,600 on the line the morning I realized the man shaking my hand at my own charity gala had been stealing from me for 3 years. My name is Daniel Harper. I was 59, recently out of heart surgery, and trying to prove to my board that stepping back for recovery didn't mean I was finished running the company I'd built from a one-truck electrical contractor into a regional infrastructure firm across Raleigh, North Carolina. The betrayal didn't arrive as shouting or scandal. It arrived as a USB drive sealed inside a plain white envelope that someone slid under my office door at 7:12 a.m. Inside that envelope was the beginning of the end. And the most dangerous part? The person responsible for the theft was standing 10 feet away from me every day, smiling, while helping organize the gala meant to celebrate my recovery. The number on the forensic report was precise: $2,417,600, transferred slowly, quietly, through a subcontractor billing chain no one had questioned, until that envelope showed up. I put the USB drive into my laptop and stared at the screen while my coffee cooled beside me. The files were simple: bank transfers, vendor invoices, metadata logs. Every document pointed to a consulting firm called Triad Field Solutions. The firm didn't exist, and the executive who approved those payments? My chief operations officer, Mark Whitaker. The same man currently telling the board I should retire after my surgery. The same man hosting the charity gala in my honor that evening. I leaned back in my chair and felt something unexpected. Not rage, clarity. Then I called the only person who could tell me if what I was looking at would survive a courtroom. Laura, I said when she answered. Laura Kim had been my attorney for 17 years. Corporate litigation, forensic contracts, the kind of lawyer who didn't waste words. I just received something, I said. What kind of something? I slid the USB drive across the desk even though she couldn't see it. The kind that ends careers. There was a pause. Then she said quietly, Daniel, if you're calling me before reacting, that means it's serious. It's worse than serious. Another pause. Bring everything, she said. And Daniel? Yes. If this is what I think it is, do not confront anyone yet. I looked through the glass wall of my office at the operations floor where Mark Whitaker stood laughing with 2 project managers. He had the relaxed confidence of a man who believed the future belonged to him. I won't, I said, because at that moment I understood something important. Revenge isn't loud. Revenge is preparation. And I had exactly 12 hours before the charity gala began. If you miss this, you lose everything. That's what Laura told me 2 hours later in her office after she finished reviewing the USB. She tapped one of the spreadsheets with her pen. These invoices, she said, were approved through your authority chain. I was in surgery, I said. Exactly. She turned the screen toward me. Mark Whitaker had approved every transfer. But the payments came from Harper infrastructure accounts, she continued, which means if this becomes public without preparation, you're exposed too. So what's the move? She folded her hands. We prove it. How? Through a forensic audit and metadata verification. She paused. And Daniel, there's another problem. I waited. The whistleblower. I frowned. What about them? She turned the USB over in her fingers. Someone inside your company created this report. Someone who knew enough to extract financial metadata. So? So whoever it is, she said, is either helping you or setting a trap. I put the phone face down. Then I waited. Because the gala that night wasn't just a celebration. It was the first time in 6 months my entire executive team, board members, and largest investors would be in the same room, including Mark Whitaker and whoever sent that envelope. Mark and I had met 15 years earlier, back when my company had 12 employees and a rented office above a plumbing supply warehouse. He was sharp, organized, aggressively ambitious, the kind of man investors loved, the kind of man I trusted, which is why 3 years ago I promoted him to COO. That promotion came after the worst moment of my career, my heart attack. I collapsed on a construction site in Durham while inspecting a substation installation. 3 days later, I woke up in intensive care with a surgeon explaining coronary bypass recovery timelines. The board panicked, contracts slowed. Mark stepped in. Publicly, he became the calm voice of stability. Privately, he began building something else. Something I didn't see until the USB arrived. Laura had one more surprise for me before I left her office. She opened a second folder. This came from the metadata review. Inside were communications logs tied to the fake vendor, emails, server timestamps. One detail stopped me cold. The original whistleblower report had been compiled from an employee login I recognized, Emily Harper, my daughter. She'd been working quietly in our accounting department for 2 years while finishing her MBA. I stared at the screen. She sent this. Laura nodded. And she didn't tell you. Why would she hide it? Laura gave a thin smile. Because she knew you'd confront him. I leaned back in the chair and exhaled slowly. Emily had my worst habit. She planned before acting. That evening, the gala ballroom filled with donors, city officials, and contractors who'd worked with my company for decades. The event took place at the Raleigh Civic Center, a polished hall with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline. Mark stood near the stage greeting guests like the host of a victory party. When he saw me enter the room, he walked over with a wide smile. "Daniel," he said. He clasped my hand like we were brothers. "Good to see you standing." "Good to be here," I said. He leaned closer. "Board meeting next month will be interesting," he said quietly. "Oh?" "Some of them think it's time you step back permanently." I nodded slowly. "That so?" He smiled again. "Doctor's orders, right?" I watched him walk away, and for the first time that day, I understood something else. He didn't know. He didn't know the USB existed. He didn't know Emily had traced the payments. He didn't know the forensic audit Laura had initiated that afternoon was already pulling bank confirmations. He thought tonight was his coronation, which made what happened next almost unfair. Halfway through the speeches, the stage lights dimmed and the projector behind the podium flickered on. Mark stepped up first. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, raising his glass, "tonight we celebrate Daniel Harper's recovery and the future of Harper Infrastructure." Applause filled the room. He continued. "But leadership also means knowing when to pass the torch." Then the screen behind him changed. The first document appeared. A bank transfer. Then another. Then the forensic audit summary Laura had prepared 2 hours earlier. The room went quiet. Mark stopped speaking. Someone in the audience whispered. He turned slowly toward the screen. "Daniel," he said into the microphone, forcing a laugh. "Is this some kind of joke?" I stood up from my table. "No," I said calmly. The next slide appeared. Email metadata, his login credentials, authorization timestamps, then the total number. $2,417,600. The ballroom fell completely silent. Mark looked at the screen again, then back at me. "What is this?" Laura stepped onto the stage beside him. "My name is Laura Kim," she said into the microphone. "I represent Harper Infrastructure." She held up a folder. "This is a forensic audit and affidavit verifying fraudulent vendor payments authorized by Mr. Mark Whitaker over a 36-month period." Mark's face turned pale. "That's ridiculous," he said. Laura didn't look at him. "These documents have been submitted to corporate auditors and the Raleigh District Attorney's Office." Then she delivered the final line. "The company is also filing for an immediate asset freeze pending investigation." The courtroom silence of a gala ballroom is a strange thing. 300 people stopped breathing at the same time. Mark turned toward me again. "You set this up?" I shook my head. "No." I glanced toward the back of the room. Emily stood there beside the AV technician Harper Infrastructure recovered most of the money through insurance and frozen accounts. Mark Whitaker resigned before the case reached trial. The board voted unanimously to keep me as CEO, but the real ending came a year later. 1 year later. I sit in a quiet office overlooking downtown Raleigh. Emily runs the company's finance division now. Laura still sends invoices that make me laugh. And Harper Infrastructure just completed the largest municipal energy contract in company history. People sometimes ask if I feel satisfied about what happened to Mark. I tell them the truth. I don't think about him very much. Because revenge isn't the point. Preparation is. Boundaries are. And sometimes the most powerful move a person can make is simply not reacting when everyone expects them to break. So I'll ask you something. What would you do if the person you trusted most was quietly stealing your future? Tell me in the comments, and if you enjoy stories where patience beats chaos, make sure you subscribe, because sometimes the quietest decisions create the loudest justice.